as I start recording this video, we're the 10th of May 2023. I have my Britney t-shirt, and I've just taken some time off, not to rest but to work in better conditions in the German mountains, one might say. Yeah, and and I intend to record a rather short video to share some thoughts. I've been reading briefly, not thoroughly, but I have briefly been reading this book, which is really excellent, by a German financial analyst and an economic professor. I received this book recently for right-wing anti-racism by Jean Robin. That's the libertarian view, actually, the American view, the unity, one might say the Hegelian view, the unity of the left and the right, namely anti-racism would be kind of a leftist view, an egalitarian view, but it can only be egalitarian in a noble sense if there is freedom on the other side. That's why it's right-wing. That's why it's a perfect synthesis, one might say. Yeah, anti-racism cannot work if it's left-wing. The right cannot work if it's racist. So the compromise, the concrete unity, is right-wing anti-racism. I will not develop on this in this video, but that's my view in politics. The truth, the good, the Christian view, the noble view, the ideal, what is right in the realm of politics is libertarianism, which is genuine, which means the possibility of transcending ethnic conflicts, which are inherent in the biological wiring of humans, one might say, to a certain extent. The possibility to transcend these by the respect for individualism, private property, free institutions, free voluntary cooperation and association, etc., etc. Yeah, and I've been reading a little bit of poetry. So yeah, I intend to talk about Austrian Economics. Actually, I don't know what I intend to talk about, but economics. Why do I talk about economics? Because in 2023, I've spent a considerable amount of time interacting with empirical people, ordinary people, to have first because I wanted to. First because it helps me to balance myself psychologically, but then because I think it's a moral duty and in the interest of everyone to participate in local community life wherever you find yourself. Participating in local civic life is good because it encourages cooperation, mutually self-interested, reciprocal cooperation. And precisely this book, the Austrians and the libertarians, actually the Austrians of the Austrian school, not the Austrians of Austria, the libertarians, they understand that the welfare state, it sounds good when you are naive. The welfare state sounds good because free stuff to help the poor, the disenfranchised, the disabled, the old people, the single mothers, etc., etc. It sounds good, but actually the welfare state is an incentive to destroy civil society because it takes away the need and the willingness for individuals and the incentive for individuals to cooperate through association, charities, solidarity gatherings, churches, institutions, independent from the state. So it replaces organic, healthy, local, intelligent, functioning solidarity with centralized bureaucratic regulations and redistribution through theft by taxation. Yeah, I will not make a theory, but yeah, just to explain to people that the welfare state harms not only the poor but the society at large. It's very difficult because yeah. So I wanted to talk about Austrian economics. This book is very important. Like most books written by Austrian, it's promoted and promoted and advertised by Ron Paul. Yeah, and yeah. So I will talk about Austrian economics. Why do I do this? Because talking about German metaphysics, it's difficult to attract the interest of people while talking about German metaphysics, because it's far too removed from their ordinary consciousness, although reality is structured by the categories which have been understood and brought to light by predominantly the Germans, metaphysicians. Yeah, but yeah, economics is an important topic, whether one likes it or not. And to clarify the mind of ordinary people through the means of economics, this is what this book talks about at the end. It encourages people to spread good ideas. But here I will make a brief remark. The problem is that in order, that's my personal problem, but actually that's the problem of all intelligent people and honest. I'm not saying that I'm always honest, but intelligent and honest people, in order to share and to spread their ideas, they need to focus the attention of the listeners or the readers or the viewers, and they need to, in order to think correctly and to have profound to gather and to understand, in order to be enlightened by profound ideas, it requires a certain amount of focus and attention. And most humans, partly because of intellectual limitations, but also cultural, the book talks about this, cultural, political, psychological hindrances, one might say. People, they either do not have the time or the interest or the culture or the education or the intelligence to read good books, or at least to focus in order to acquire good ideas. This is why good idea. That's why the intelligent and honest people, they speak kind of not emptily. No, because good ideas, they spread. And here I'm on the side of the aristocrats, in the sense that it's better to have a few people who are intelligent and dedicated and honest and competent than a mass of people who superficially understand or do not understand at all. Yeah. But the intelligent, honest intellectuals like Ludwig von Mises, or to a lesser extent Ron Paul is a great individual, but in the terms of intellectual contributions, he's not on the same level as Mises. He has done much more in a way of spreading good ideas, and his consistency and his dedication is admirable, of course, but in the realm of purely economic theory, Mises, of course, is purely an intellectual. Ron Paul, he started as a physician and then became a politician. Yeah, but he's a very competent man, of course. Yeah, so the people who speak the truth is a process, and there's the truth is the totality of all truths in a way, and truth is a process of unfolding, development, etc., etc. But here, in the realm of economics, someone like Mises and the libertarians, the Austrian school, the Austro-libertarians, as they are now called, they speak in a way the truth, because here truth in the ordinary sense, their intellectual theory enables to explain, to rationally make sense of most events, either on a what is called microeconomics, on an individual level, or on a macro level, on the global, on the social level, or even on the global level. Their predictions, most of the time, they are accurate, and if they do not make predictions, at least they explain in an intelligent way the dysfunctioning or why an economy functions or dysfunctions. So they bring intelligibility, clarity, coherence, consistency, rigor, etc., etc. So they are almost consistently right in their analyses, but they are not very widespread. So they are very intense in terms of truth, one might say, but they are not very extended for the aforementioned reason, because it appeals to people who are first honest, intelligent, dedicated, interested, and there are not many. Yeah, but I'm trying to work on making these ideas popular, and every time that I interact with empirical people, I try, when I talk about economics, when I talk more than 30 seconds to say a good morning, when I have longer discussions, which does not happen frequently, but I try to spread intelligent ideas, but you have to go step by step, not in order to manipulate, but in order to take into account the level of consciousness of others, because not everyone is at the same level for all the aforementioned reasons: lack of time, lack of interest, lack of culture, lack of opportunity, sometimes lack of intelligence, etc. There are many reasons. Yeah. But these books, they are really excellent. The books written by the libertarians, they are a pleasure to read. They are enlightening, they are intelligent, they are coherent. They are really great. And that's truly universal in the best sense. It's not universalist, it's universal. Namely, it can be particularized in many countries. And here, Mr. Andreas Marquardt, I don't know him personally, and I've just read this one book, but I know he's the president, or was, I don't know if it's still the case, was the president of the Mises Institute in Germany. I know there's a Mises Institute in France, in the US, of course, in probably many other countries. So that's why the universal here in the realm of economics particularizes itself in many countries, and they all share an intellectual affinity, one might say, a community of spirit, in a way. And the Germans, I thought about this because here I feel a little bit revitalized, because I spent a few days in the mountains, not officially in Germany, that's still French territory, but it belongs to Germany, historically, culturally, spiritually, politically, at some moment, yeah. Yeah, so the Germans, there are German-speaking people. I feel good when I encounter German-speaking people. Yeah, but the Germans here, I'm talking about the intellectuals. They are, in a way, they are very serious. They are slow to set into motion, etc. But there are intellectual heavyweights in the modern world coming from Germany. I did not doubt this, but yeah, they just that the Germans, they are under more moral pressure, guilt, remorse, shame, etc. than all the others. But the Germans, when they struggle intellectually, in a sense of not the difficulty, but to struggle, to compete, yeah, they can produce greatness, even in a decadent era. There's still greatness coming out of Germany in this day and age. Yeah. So, yeah. I intend to talk about economics. Monopolies in economy, in economics, but actually in the economy, every monopoly, in a way, it's kind of bad, because the monopolist, if he's alone in his position, he takes in all the benefits, the profits, the income, because he's the only provider in town, one might say. And therefore he has no incentive to improve, and he tends to become a little bit decadent. And it has been well known by serious economists for at least the 18th century, but it has been even more refined in the 19th and 20th century. A monopoly is bad for the quality, for the customers, because the quality tends to drop and the prices tend to increase, because the monopolist, the agency, whether it's a company or a state or an organization, the agent, the economic agent who possess a monopoly on the providing of a good or a service, he has no incentive to improve because there is no competition. That's why it's bad for all monopolies in terms of the quality of goods and services offered, and it's bad for the customers. And when the monopoly is politicized, namely when it is the state who owns the monopoly, because it can outlaw its potential competitors, it can acquire a monopoly through political force, which is coercion. There can be, and there are sometimes monopolies being brought forth and created within the economy, but because a business becomes so successful that the others, they cannot compete. And usually then there is a deal between the state and the big company which has become a monopolist, crony capitalism, etc., etc. Yeah. Sometimes the state wants to play the good cop and says that to prevent monopolies from forming. We are being taught that in economic curriculum, that states, they, especially on the European continent with the European Union, they prevent the formation of monopolies among companies and cartels for the benefit of the customers. So the state uses monopolistic state education financed by taxes, which is coercion and theft. They use the monopolist educational system to rent and to criticize the monopolies of big companies, but the state never criticizes its own monopoly, of course. Yeah, because when there is a threat of a monopoly among companies or businesses which have been formed through the relatively free market, one might say, it's an excuse for the state to regulate, to legislate, to confiscate, etc., etc. Yeah. But yeah. That's why here the Austrians, they are like the German metaphysicians in the sense that they disregard empiricism because the logical structure of reality is more important in their view than the quantity of data or facts, because the raw amount of facts or data, if they are not interpreted correctly through the proper categories, that's not what they use, but through the proper economic reasoning, one might say. Economic reasoning, it's another term for economic logic, one might say. So the data, if they are not properly understood, categorized, ordained, one might say, they are meaningless in a way. And that's the criticism of the Austrians against they do not call this, but the empirical economists. Data as such, if the categories are not proper, are not correct, if the reasoning is not consistent and coherent and structured, you can have the data, you can have them say anything. If you are not aware of your own metaphysics. Metaphysics here is another word for logic. So in this sense, the Austrian school of economics, the Austrian economists, they are like the German metaphysicians. That's why I love them so much. Yeah. Yeah. And they think they think really rigorously and systematically in a good sense, and they have a total view. And here it's really a good way, a German way in the good sense, a German way of thinking. Yeah. And the good books are those where you have no hint, no clue as to who the author is, because if it's a theoretical book, it is supposed to express laws, if they are not perfectly accurate, at least approximation of laws, and therefore they are universal, and the subjectivity, here it means the personal characteristic, determination, history of the individual who writes the book, it ought to be kind of irrelevant when it comes to writing theoretical books. Precisely because the truth is universal, if it is true. Yeah. And here, I thought about a good joke while reading this book, because they are very critical of monopoly, of course, and especially the monopoly that the state has on money creation, or the enactment and the forceful, coercive imposition onto society of the obligation, the compulsory use of money. Basically, here I simplify. The Austrians, since Karl Menger, they explain that money is a social construct, but in the good sense. Money is here. It has taken me a lot of time to understand this, because here I make a brief remark about the theory of money. There are topics in the modern West, 21st century, which are taboo. One is not supposed to talk about these topics. A realistic anthropology, race realism, is taboo. The JQ is taboo, and the question of money is kind of taboo as well. It's less taboo because it's more abstract in a way. But it's taboo nonetheless. And so these are the kind of topics that when you become a little bit knowledgeable, you know that most of what is said about these topics is lacking, misinformed, or downright fraudulent. So you know, when you become a little bit knowledgeable, that what is provided, it's true for many other topics, but these are the most sensitive topics, what is provided by the official structures of authority, the scholars, the universities, the journalists, the media, the politicians, etc., is incomplete at best, misinformed, or downright deceitful. So you know, if you become knowledgeable, that the information about these topics is not trustworthy most of the time, and not reliable. So you know that most of the time it's false, either because it's not complete, it's outdated, it's ideologically bended, etc., etc. But knowing that a theory or a source of information or an ideology is wrong epistemologically, you know that it's wrong, but you do not know what is right. So it's a first step to destroy the idols, one might say. Here, in terms of the monetary theory, it's good to know that most of what economists say on the topic of money, but also on state intervention in the economy, or the economy at large, the state-financed economists, because their livelihood and their earnings, their income depend on the state most of the time, they have an incentive not to criticize the state, the branch on which they are sitting, or the hand that feeds them. This book talks about this. Yeah. But to know that most of what official economics says is kind of misinformed or deceitful, most of the time it's misinformed because the people that are not intelligent enough to understand the falsehood that they spread. They are misguided, most of them. Yeah. But to know that the source of information is not reliable, that's the first step. But then you have to know what or how to replace the theory with a better one. It brings about a lot of confusion because precisely this is what opens the door to really the insane conspiracy theories, because to prove or to show or to believe that a source of information is wrong, is false, whatever this means, it doesn't mean that all the alternative sources of information are right. And this is precisely the tactics that the mainstream media use to defend their monopoly, namely, they put the emphasis onto the most ludicrous conspiracy theories like flat earth or the insane people, to ridicule and to discredit the opposition. Of course, they focus the attention onto the most stupid, most nonsensical aspect. But here, it doesn't mean that it's not because your competitor is stupid or deceitful or delirious that you are competent. If you have a restaurant and you say, oh, there is another restaurant in the neighborhood and they sell poisonous food, it will, of course, it will not encourage people to go there, but it doesn't mean that the food that you serve is good. Maybe it is, but it's not a guarantee. Yeah, to prove your opponent wrong is not a guarantee of your own righteousness here in terms of epistemology. Yeah. That's why there are insane people in the conspiracy circles, because destroying the legitimacy of the official narrative, which has been the case with the internet, the legitimacy of the politicians, the media, the scholars is vanishing in a way. But it doesn't mean that it has to be replaced by all sorts of nonsense. So what I wanted to say is that precisely in the realm of economics, once you've understood that the official narrative is kind of deceitful for many reasons, groupthink, ideological correctness, financing, corruption, manipulation, there are many reasons, or simply ignorance or intellectual laziness, there are many reasons. But once you've understood that most of what is being taught in economics in the official circles is lacking, one might say, you have to find a replacement. And here the Austrians, they offer an alternative, because here, just to illustrate, some radical Marxists, they agree with the Austrian economists, for instance, in denouncing the teachings of the official circles, but the solution that they offer is not very reliable in terms of economic seriousness, etc., etc. So, to identify the potential replacement for the fraudulent economic theory or other theories in all other fields, it's difficult as well. So the Austrians, they offer satisfaction because they are coherent, they are consistent, they are intelligent, most of them are honest, not because they are better, although they are, but simply because, here, this book talks about this as well. If you want to compete with a monopolist or with a strong, with a dominant company, here a dominant business, here the business would be monopolistic, state-sponsored educational teachings, you have to offer another service, and being honest, that's the strategy of Mises. Being honest is a way of offering an alternative. Yeah. Ron Paul, for instance, he can be marketed as an honest person. People who love honesty, they tend to love Ron Paul. I don't know why Ron Paul is not more popular in the US. Maybe probably because bad press, or because he's thought to be too radical, etc. But his integrity and honesty cannot be questioned. So, yeah, and it sounds good. Of course it is, but sometimes the people, they don't really care about honesty. Here, the corrupt politicians, the example would be Berlusconi in Italy. There are other demagogues, mostly in Southern America, but Italy as well, or or there are examples in France as well. Sometimes the people, they are aware that their politicians are corrupt, they have various scandals, they are financially corrupt, etc. But they don't really care because they have other good aspects. Because here I know enough about human psychology and about history to know that someone who is, in a way, too honest, it can be frightening. Because the people, they say, oh, that's weird, he's too honest. That's why a little bit of corruption can be reassuring in a way. That's why Ron Paul hasn't been very popular, although his ideas are consistently great in terms of economics and politics. Maybe because he's too honest and too good. It's too brilliant. So now I wanted to make a joke that I thought about. A joke. Once you've understood that monopolies are kind of bad, I will make a theological joke. Let us imagine God. I don't know where, but God is in a position of monopoly. He says to himself, well, I'm God, I'm the only one in the universe who possess all the abilities, etc. I'm so intelligent, I understand economics perfectly, and I'm so intelligent that I know that if I remain a monopolist for too long, I might become decadent. I need the competitors to prevent me from the risk of falling into slumber or decadence, because that's what God would say. I'm so intelligent, I understand the laws of economics. It's not good for me and for my customers if I am a monopolist. So I need to create competition. That's in mythology. That would be the devil, as they call this. That's one way of envisioning this. That would be the competitor, but of course that's God who creates a competitor, and then that's the joke. God probably says to the competitor, and I say, let's compete. He can create many others, but he says to the other, okay, let's compete, see what you can do. And then God looks at the competitor and says, damn, he's efficient, he's good, he's innovative, he works hard, he produces greatness. Maybe I've made a mistake. How am I gonna outcompete the guy that I let loose? I'm gonna have problems because I'm God, I'm all-knowing, intelligent, I'm good, but I wanted to do good by introducing a little bit of competition in my monopoly, but now will I be able to reclaim my monopoly? Because this guy that I've created is so good, so efficient. I will have to to regulate and to legislate to bringing out of business because I'm God, I want my fair share of the profits. And then the other competitor, he would think, but I have been working hard, I have been innovative, I have been providing customers with goods and services that they find valuable. I've brought value to the economy. I balance my books. I'm honest, etc. Now the guy up there, he wants to regulate me, to tax me. That's a joke. No, but seriously. That's a good theory. No, the theory here, that was the comical aspect, because it can be partly funny, but the serious theological aspect. God. Let us imagine the real God, wise, all-knowing, etc., good, mighty, etc., etc. God really understands, the real God, I mean, he really understands the laws of economics, and he really knows. Let us imagine a state where God knows everything. He knows that monopolies are bad. And here it's kind of very serious that God, in a way, has an incentive to create competitors because he's so good that he allows others to compete against himself eventually for the benefit of the customers. Because he knows, here it's partly comical, but it's partly serious, that competition can bring good. Actually, it does bring good. Yeah. That would be interesting to have the perspective of theologians who are well read in economics about the question of monopolies. What if God was a monopolist, but he's so good that he's good and fair and just, so he wants to bring competition, because that's an interesting viewpoint. Yeah. It sounds like a joke, but actually it's kind of it's serious and intelligent. Competition it's not that it can, but competition, if it's regulated, but not by bureaucratic regulation, but if it's fair competition, of course, it's good. And here, that's really a serious view, that competition is the driving force behind innovation, increase in productivity, increase in wealth, increase in standards of living, and human prosperity, not in terms just of economics, but in the overall aspect, in terms of health, hygiene, life expectancy, leisure, etc. Competition really is the driving force behind human progress, and it's competition and cooperation. They seem to be opposed, but I read this in a libertarian book recently, probably the book by Mr. Di Lorenzo, or maybe it's another book. No, I think it's in this book. But actually, competition is cooperation under a certain aspect, because the division of labor increases productivity, because individuals, they specialized on their individual tasks, and each individual becomes better at what he does specifically or specially, one might say, and the division of labor increases overall productivity, and it encourages competition in a free market to outcompete others and to become better, to innovate, to bring new products, or to bring the same products but at a better price, or to increase the quality of the existing products by improving the materials or the working, the process of production, the method of labor, whatever, to improve. But in a division of labor, that's an incentive to compete not only with the person in the same field. Bakers compete with bakers, lawyers compete with lawyers, hairdressers compete with hairdressers, bankers compete with bankers, when there is not a statist granted monopoly, a central bank. Yeah, the agents within the same economic field, they compete with one another, but they also compete with, here that's what Per Bylund teaches. I have the book there. They compete against the people in the same field, one I say, but they also compete indirectly with all other businesses. For instance, hotels, they compete with other hotels, but they also compete with camping, in a way. Italian restaurants, they compete with other Italian restaurants, but they also compete with Mexican restaurants. And even more, they compete with food producers which are not restaurants. Yeah, all forms of I don't know, entertainment, opera producers, they compete with I don't know, I would say nightclubs. Well, in a way, yes, but yeah, yeah. So, but because so the division of labor enhances productivity because the economic agents can specialize in their own task and become more productive at what they do, but also it encourages cooperation because it brings about interdependence, and this is what brings forth civilization, because people have to acknowledge their reciprocal interdependence, and it encourages civility. The problem is when civilization becomes in a way so prosperous that it gets poisoned from within, one might say. And here there are interesting remarks about the fall of the Roman Empire. The theory of the authors, they talk about this in a few pages, is that basically bread and circuses, which was the Roman equivalent of the modern welfare state, tititainment, one might say, this is what has brought about the decline eventually. There are other reasons, but it has facilitated or accelerated the decline. But is it the cause or is it the consequence? Here, these are logical categories, but actually the view here I simply that the Roman Republic was so successful that it fell. It took many centuries to fall, but actually it declined because it was so successful. They were so militarily successful due to virtue, efficiency, discipline, dedication, piety, etc., etc. The classical Roman virtues, virtue, pietas, and fides. So the civic and military virtue, religious piety, and interpersonal. Fides would be fidelity, faithfulness in family and clients, relationships, so interpersonal relationship. So the Roman morals, the Roman ethics, in a way, was so successful that it brought about tremendous military and economic success, that they declined due to strong men bring good times, good times bring weak men bring hard times bring strong men, etc., etc. Actually, that's dialectical. But the Romans, they were so strong in the centuries before the Common Era that they reached dominance over the Mediterranean and most of the known and civilized ancient world in Europe and Western Asia, one may say. They became so dominant that they declined from within, in a way, because the conditions which had made them great, the difficulty struggling with other competing towns or cities in the Italian peninsula, the need to be constantly on alert, to be constantly disciplined, ruthless in a way in their morality and ethics, had made them so successful that they had come to dominate all their competitors on the Italian peninsula, first the Latium, then the whole of Italy, then the whole of the Mediterranean, and even further, that they had no longer competitors from outside, except those annoying Germans at the border. Now, of course, there were a few competitors, but very far in Asia, or the Germans, or some in the Arabic Peninsula, but actually they became so, or the Scots, very far up north, the Scots at the border, the Picts, yeah. They were so dominant that they, in a way, they declined. They slowly declined from within, because they had become a little bit soft and decadent due to an excess of greatness, in a way. Yeah. And economically, it's not here. It's difficult to analyze, because one might say they declined because they implemented the welfare state and regulation, and because they debased the currency. Or one could say they debased the currency, they brought about the welfare state because they were already in a process of decline. The old Romans wouldn't have tolerated bread and circuses, but actually the two, they are kind of interconnected. It's Wechselwirkung, the chicken or the egg, yeah. But the thesis of this book is that the welfare state and socialism, in a way, I simplify, socialism brought about the downfall of Rome over many centuries, because it can be rationally advocated, because indeed the currency was debased, the quantity of gold was reduced, the proportion of gold in coins was being reduced by debasing the currency physically, by mixing lower quality metals. The empire, already in the Republic, but the empire financed bread and circuses, so the people became dependent on the state, they became decadent morally, there was a loosening of morality, importation of foreign religious cults, etc., etc. So a loosening and a mixing of population, less and less cultural, ethnic, religious unity, etc. There are many reasons, but the economic reason is quite convincing. Yeah. So yeah. Okay. I will stop there. Yeah. Yeah, so economics, it's not my favorite topic, but actually it's quite interesting. And yeah. I don't want to make too long a video, less than 50 minutes, that's okay. So I've been pre-reading this book. I will reread probably more thoroughly to be able to read, to implement the ideas in my mind, and then to be able to share them, to express them, to communicate them more clearly. Yeah. But yeah, this is really a great book, and that's what I had to share. Now I will rest a little bit, but go back to work.